No protectors here, no lanterns, no Kryptonian. This world will fall, like all the others. Justice League is directed by Zack Snyder, and it is starring Ben Affleck, Gal Gadot, Jason Momoa, Ray Fisher, and Ezra Miller. Before going any further, I just want to say there will not be any plot spoilers in this review. This is the newest film in the DCEU, or the DC Extended Universe, or the DC Cinematic Universe, whatever you want to call it, it is up to you. And now we are following the events of Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. We are now living in a world without a Superman, and it is up to Batman and Wonder Woman to assemble a team known as the Justice League in order to combat a new foe in Steppenwolf and his army of parademons. In this film, the main thing that I can say is that the characters are great, the team chemistry is great, and when they are on screen working together, all of that is great. And the other things are the ones that are the problem. But before I get into the more problem and the more negative aspects of the film, let me say some of the more positive things. The action in the film is awesome to see. Granted, it is very popcorn movie heavy. There's not a lot of depth going on in any of the action sequences, but to see that Warner Brothers is at least trying to make their films more lighthearted and more action heavy and be overall more entertaining is a positive, more hopeful feeling that I have with this film and the universe going forward. Also, I want to say that it is unfortunate that Zack Snyder was not able to complete this film the way he wanted it to be. I think a lot of that is obviously unforeseen because of the tragic events in his life, and Warner Brothers ultimately had to put this film together without his guidance for the most part, at least from what we understand, and Joss Whedon had to step in. And I have to say, the film feels rather seamless when it comes to the switching of these two directors. Granted, these are two directors with vastly different styles and takes on certain things, but I think the film is definitely consistent throughout. I will also say the pacing of this film is kind of a double-edged sword. It is both good and bad. It is good because we are getting into the action, we're getting into the story right away, we're fully immersed throughout the film, and the film moves at a very steady pace. It's very consistently pushing the plot forward, but unfortunately the film doesn't have enough time to breathe. It doesn't let the scenes breathe the way they are intended to breathe, the way they are supposed to feel. And that feels because of this crazy dumb mandate that the film had to be 2 hours or less, which for me is completely asinine and undermines the integrity of the film to a certain extent, and undermines the vision of these filmmakers and all of the people who are working on this film. I will also say the film depicts these characters the way I personally like them to be depicted. Unfortunately, we are not getting a lot of backstory and time with some of the new characters, particularly Flash, Aquaman, and Cyborg. We are given enough of their backstory, enough of their character to get a small latch on to each of them. I think they purposely held a lot of backstory and a lot of stuff back, not only because of the time constraint of the 2-hour time limit, but also because we're going to see these characters again. Flash is getting his own movie, Cyborg is supposed to get his own movie, and even if he doesn't, he's definitely going to show up probably somewhere again, because for me, out of all of the new characters, I thought Cyborg was the most interesting and fascinating and given the most depth when it comes to his character's backstory. Also, when it comes to Ezra Miller's The Flash, I thought he was great. I thought he was definitely the Barry Allen I've come to know as kind of comedic relief when it comes to the team, cracking jokes, but he has a more serious side to him, which I think he uses his comedy and his lightheartedness to mask a lot of internal pain. Aquaman is the most secretive, I think, of all of them, because we're going to get an Aquaman movie in a year from now. We are going to probably get his backstory and delve into his world. Jason Momoa is awesome in this movie. He is awesome when he's on screen. He feels inherently badass. We are also revisiting some characters we know. Ben Affleck's Batman is now out of the darkness that was in Batman v Superman. He's into more of the light side. He's opened up to a whole new world, and he's realized that he has to work with people again, and he has to make certain human connections, and all of that is inherent within his character and within the scenes that he has with Diana Prince or Wonder Woman. Her interactions with Ben Affleck as Bruce Wayne / Batman, I think, are fantastic, and that's where a lot of some of my favorite parts of the film is when these characters are able to discuss certain things with one another, and you really get to see the diversity within the team and how they're going to have to put their differences aside and work together. All of those scenes are great, and I wish they went on for longer or that there were more of them. I want to touch on Wonder Woman for a little more. She is definitely a star now. They're definitely pushing that character more into the forefront, and it's really interesting how the shift is happening when it comes to that. Now let's get to the more negatives of the film. They are there, and they are problematic, and they are pretty obvious. The villain of the film is extremely weak. He is one of the more weaker villains I think we've seen in the entire comic book genre of movies so far. He's literally there just for exposition, just to be a one-note character, and just to be a plot device where the characters have to have a bad guy to fight. They need to have a reason to get together and fight parademons and fight the bad guy known as Steppenwolf, who is voiced by Ciarán Hinds, who really does a fantastic job of voicing him. The problem is, the dialogue he is given is not very good. There is a lot of things I believe that were cut from his character that would have really developed him a little bit more, because he is massively underdeveloped, and a lot of people are complaining about this, but the CGI for him is what it is. I know that's a bit of a cop-out, but it's kind of on par for CGI that I've seen with other CGI villains. He's not the first CGI villain we've seen, he won't be the last, and his CGI is okay for me. It's not particularly astoundingly great, and that brings me to the CGI throughout the film, which I think is also a problematic thing. It's not something that derails the film entirely for me. The CGI at times, though, is fantastic. There are some moments of this film where the CGI is great. Like, okay, this looks awesome. Every time the Flash uses his powers, CGI is great. But then other times we see green screen backgrounds that look very obvious. They look fake. And we also see one particular CGI thing that they did with some character that is being played all throughout the internet that also is noticeable. That thing that they did became less noticeable throughout the film for me. It was initially jarring, but once I made my peace with it, I could move on and get into the film. A fair criticism that I feel that one can make is that the film feels very patchworked together. It feels like the film was kind of patched together to make it go a certain way, to make it feel a certain way, and I definitely understand where that comes from, because you can see it throughout. The film does have a particular goal it's trying to do, a particular plot it's trying to get through, and it does streamline the film throughout, but like I've said, streamlining this film is its biggest weakness. This film needed an extra, I would say, 20 to 25 minutes. It would have definitely helped when it came to giving this film much more depth and much more dramatic weight that I feel that it desperately needed. And I feel that they were definitely at some point going for a film like that, but because of the time constraint, you had to cut a lot of that out. So with all that being said, I'm going to give this film a 3.65 out of 5 stars. It is not the best in the DCEU. It is not the worst in the DCEU. It is a film that is ultimately entertaining and more lighthearted. If you were looking for that change of pace from Batman v Superman, you're definitely going to get it here. Also, I thought the characters worked, I thought the actor chemistry worked, and I found myself enjoying the film overall, despite its very obvious and its very many flaws. So that has been my review of Justice League. If you like this video, please check out the other videos on my channel.